The Sound of Music showed a story, not real life. So much did the actor who played the captain dislike the movie that he called it The Sound of Mucus behind the scenes. Chemicals made the lead actress's brown hair turn bright orange, which was a big mess. Instead, they had to bleach it blonde. The group had to deal with 11 miserable weeks of rain in Austria. Not even the famous first scene was magical. She was hit 9 times in the ground by chopper wind. They tried to keep this story from the press. Maria von Trapp had no idea she would write books. She was born on a train to Vienna in 1905. Her parents died when she was young, and she was raised by a mean uncle who didn't like the Catholic Church. In a strange turn of events, Maria became a Catholic and joined Nonnberg Abbey in Salzburg. She got another surprise in her life when she was sent from the abbey to work as a governess for the daughter of Georg von Trapp, a naval captain who had lost his wife. Maria married Georg on November 26, 1927, even though she was 25 years younger than him. Georg died in 1947, and after many years, a friend pushed Maria to write down her life story. Beginning, Maria quickly wrote on a few pages to show she wasn't good at writing. Instead, she showed that she was good at telling stories. The story of the Trapp family singers, her autobiography, was a big hit in 1949, but Maria later laughed about how the musical version made her look like a cute angel. People who knew her agreed with her that she wasn't like that. Maria was a lot more stubborn, strong, and angry than the role Julie Andrews later played. The story was a hit in Europe long before it was made into a movie. A German movie called The Trapp Family came out in 1956. Hans Hohl played the Baron, and Ruth Lubrick played Maria. The movie wasn't a big, fancy Hollywood production, but it hit a nerve with people who were still healing from Y2. It was a huge hit, making millions of Deutsche Marks in Germany and doing well in the US. Hollywood had a very different idea for the Von Trapp story at first. They got the rights to the German movies in late 1956. After Roman Holiday and Sabrina, Audrey Hepburn was already a big star, so they thought of a simple English version. They even asked Vincent J. Dunhu, who runs a TV station, to take charge. But Dunhu told them something they didn't expect after they saw the German movie. He said the movie looked like it was made by a beginner, but the story was too sad for a normal movie. He insisted that it had to be a show with Broadway star Mary Martin in the lead role. Paramount didn't like this new idea, and the project fell apart when Hepburn couldn't work on it. By chance, 20th Century Fox bought the rights for $125 million in 1960. A risky move, especially since the company was losing a lot of money on Cleopatra because of all the problems it was having. This risk would soon pay off, but no one knew it yet. The project began as something very different before it came together. At first, The Sound of Music was just going to be a play with some German folk songs thrown in. They wrote the music for Oklahoma and The King and I, but Rodgers and Hammerstein wouldn't let them do it that way. They said they would join, but only if they could write a score that was completely new. Everything changed because of this brave choice. Some of the most famous songs in the world are from that movie. The story was also turned into a full-length show. Oscar Hammerstein died of stomach cancer only 9 months after the show opened on Broadway, so The Sound of Music was their last great work together. It opened on November 16, 1959, and was a huge hit right away. It was put on 1,443 times and won 5 Tony Awards, including Best Musical. More than 2 million tickets had already been sold for the show before it even started, which was a Broadway record at the time. Some changes were made when it was time to make it into a movie. I'm sure Richard Rodgers wrote 2 brand new songs and something good that goes better with the movie. Robert Wise took a big risk in 1964 when he began casting for The Sound of Music. There wasn't a lot of fame for Julie Andrews yet. A few of the company executives were scared. She was pretty, but no one knew if people would come just to see her. Wise wasn't willing to risk everything either. He made a second list in secret that had safer, more well-known names on it, like Grace Kelly and Shirley Jones. but he felt something about Andrews deep down. Then one night everything changed. Ernest Lehman, a scriptwriter, and Wise got to see unfinished scenes from Mary Poppins behind closed doors at Disney. It was only a matter of minutes. In a hurry, Wise told Lehman, "Let's go sign this girl before someone else does." They gave her a small deal, $225,000 for The Sound of Music and another movie after that. It was a good idea. Julie wasn't sure she was sold even after she signed. She sat down with Wise and asked him straight out, "How will you take the sugar out of this story?" That question alone made Wise know that Maria was the right person. For him. She didn't want the character to be made into a cartoon. He also didn't. They agreed to put the story down on solid ground and make it more real and warm. As Julie locked down the part of a lifetime, there was a fight going on the other side of the cast. Christopher Plummer didn't want to be in this show at all. He wasn't afraid to say that he thought it was too corny and passionate. He said no over and over to the part of Captain Von Trapp. Wise even thought about getting other famous people to play, like Bing Crosby, Sean Connery, or Yul Brynner. But Plummer was what Wise really wanted. He went all the way to London just to change his mind. They agreed to do it. Plummer Umber could work closely with the writers to change how the captain is portrayed. He thought Von Trapp should be smarter, sassier, and have a real dramatic journey. Plummer Umber even asked for a solo song to talk about the captain's problems that no one knew about. Even though he finally agreed, he still made jokes about the movie behind the scenes, calling it The Sound of Mucus and S&M to let off steam. It was even harder to find the 7 kids who would play the Von Trapp kids. The kids had to be able to sing, dance, act, and make the show feel like a real family. Then there were hundreds of interviews. Kurt Russell, Patty Duke, and even Mia Farrow, who you may know, tried out. Farrow tried out 3 times for Liselle, but Wise didn't think she had enough drive or dance skills for the part. When Daniel Trujita showed off his voice, he quickly got the part of Rolf. But there was a strange turn of events. He shot his first scene, which was the end of his character's story, where Ralph betrays Von Trapp's. To figure out how to turn Ralph from a sweet boy in love to a tough young Nazi, he had to work backwards. He did it, even though it wasn't easy. The group had to go through some shocking changes to their bodies behind the scenes, and some of them were only temporary. Julie Andrews, who is naturally brunette, had a bad hair day right before shooting. They used chemicals to try to add some highlights to her brown hair, but they made it bright orange instead. Because they didn't have time to fix it right, they bleached and dyed her hair yellow. It wasn't how she looked in real life, but it worked for the movie. It was even worse for Daniel Trujita. His dark hair was bleached many times to make it look like the perfect Aryan. Because the chemicals were so strong, his hair was damaged. For good. Afterward, he said that the treatments made him lose half of his hair and that it never grew back the same way. He had to pay a high price for a few months of shooting, and it followed him around like a scar after the cameras stopped rolling. People all over the world were moved by The Sound of Music, but the people of Salzburg weren't so happy about it. As the movie was being filmed right in front of their homes, most people didn't even notice. After the fact, Peter Husty from the Salzburg Museum said he didn't know much about the movie until he was an adult. Some Salzburgers didn't like the story because they thought it made Austrians look bad during World War II. They believed it was too beautiful, and that too many of the characters looked like Nazis. Even worse was how the filmmakers mixed up real places, putting together parts of different houses to make the fake Von Trapp home. Many people in the area still know more about the movie from tourists asking them about it than from their own memories. The crew led by Robert Weise thought they would be done in 6 weeks when they got to Salzburg in early 1964. Instead, it turned into an 11-week nightmare of rain and misery. It rained and damaged almost everything. Scenes that were meant to take a day took weeks to finish. Because it rained all the time, Do Re alone needed 9 sites and 2 whole months to shoot. When it rained too hard, The crew had to quickly go inside to small churches or studios close by, and when they had to have sunlight, they brought in huge lights from all over Europe to make it look like it was sunny. It got so bad that almost every light and engine on the continent had to be rented. It wasn't easy to house and move 250 people either. The team had actors, stagehands, techs, and everything else you can think of. It was a nightmare to feed and house them. The prices went through the roof as the schedule dragged on. Even worse, the kids were growing up too quickly. Nick Hammond, who played Friedrich, gained 6 inches while the movie was being filmed. At first he wore shoes with lifts, but by the end he was just walking around barefoot. Charmian Carr, who played Lysel, had to stand on boxes to make the height differences seem real. Debbie Turner's character, Marta, lost her baby teeth during the shoot, so dentists in the area had to make her fake ones so she wouldn't look different on screen. Things got so crazy that extras dressed for summer were shivering in the freezing cold when the big fair scene was filmed. When the kids fall off, a boat scene was being made. It was one of the scariest parts. Kim Carath, who played Gretel, was 5 years old and couldn't swim. Julie Andrews didn't know she had to save her until just before shooting. When the boat tipped over, Andrews fell the wrong way, though, and Kim went under. Drew swam faster than he ever had before to get to her. However, Kim took a drink of water and then threw up after being saved. She will always be afraid of water because of that day. It wasn't all happiness in the beginning, even in the beautiful scene with Julie Andrews spinning on a mountain. The wind from the helicopter's engines threw her straight into the grass every time it flew by with a cameraman on the side. 9 times in all, it happened over and over. He had to spit out hay and dirt after almost every take. He kept giving her the thumbs up and saying, "One more time," when she begged him to fly wider. While shooting the famous gazebo dance, for 16 to 17 years, Charmian Carr, who played Lysel, had her own mishap. The people who made her outfit forgot to give her shoes rubber bottoms. She injured her ankle when she badly slipped during a jump and hit the glass. Even though the group was in a hurry to find a stand-in, Carr insisted on finishing the scene herself. She did the dance even though she was hurt, and most people didn't even notice the bandage on her ankle in some shots. Christopher Plummer, who played Captain Von Trapp, looked like he was having too much fun in Austria at the same time. Behind the scenes, he often called the movie's sweet tone the sound of mucus. He didn't mope. Instead, he drank wine and local sweets to drown his anger. His clothes had to be taken off and sewn back on because his waist got so big. He later said that he was drunk during the emotional Edelweiss scene at the event. In a retrospect, Plummer said he was a selfish young actor who didn't value the chance he had at the time. Sometimes things are hard for the young artists too. Besides the time they almost drowned with Kim Carth, they also faced other problems. It took them 2 whole months of practice before they even went to Salzburg to learn how to do the coordinated bike scene for Dome. It wasn't easy to sing and ride a bike at the same time, especially for kids. They could only work a few hours a day because of strict rules against child labor, which made things even harder. The crew had to be extra careful with their schedules. In some cases, shows had to double cast to follow the rules. However, The Sound of Music mostly got by with just the 7 original kids. Christopher Plummer never got along well with The Sound of Music. He couldn't stand it, even though the movie made him popular all over the world. He didn't like the name at all. He instead called it things like the movie S&M or, most famously, The Sound of Snot. He made fun of how sweet and sentimental he thought it all was in his book. He also didn't hold back in talks. Someone asked him about it, and he said it was so bad and slimy that it made him cringe. His role, Captain Von Trapp, was what really drove him crazy. Plummer thought the part was so dull and flat that it was like beating a dead horse. But he did more than just complain. He worked hard to give Captain Von Trapp more depth and seriousness. Plummer told director Robert Wise right away that the character had to keep talking in a sharp, strict, and choppy way. Once the tough parts were over, the emotional parts could feel real instead of forced. Wise agreed. Play Me Umber was thanked by screenwriter Ernest Lehman later, who said that pushing for bigger scenes made the movie better. Even so, Play Me Umber said that many of his meanest comments began as jokes in dull press talks. But when the media got their hands on them, they paid attention to everything. Maria was played by Julie Andrews, who also saw what was wrong. She had real doubts about the idea, even though she was nominated for an Oscar. She was afraid at the time that the story would quickly become too sweet and unrealistic. Those beautiful Rodgers and Hammerstein songs, the snowy setting, and the cute kids. It was too sweet to handle because everything was lined up just right. Before the movie, Andrews met with Robert Wise and Christopher Plummer and began to work out a plan to get rid of the sugar. She later said that Play Me Umber was very important for keeping the movie real. His strict, straightforward personality gave her character a real person to fight against. Their back-and-forth energy made their relationship stand out. Andrews and Play Me Umber were close friends for decades, even though there were problems on set. They stayed friends until Play Me Umber died. She said that the movie would have been too soft without him a lot of the time. Behind the scenes, there was another problem. Workers were singing. Even though he looked great as Captain Von Trapp, the studio didn't think his voice was strong enough for the part of Ed Levis. They brought in a trained singer named Billy Lee to blend in with the plumber's voice and improve the sound of the song without telling the crowd. A lot of people didn't know the truth for years. The public could finally hear Play Me Umber's original tape without any changes until 2023, which is almost 60 years later. Play Me Umber had already died at that point. He was 91 years old. Fans got a taste of what might have been when they heard his real voice again after all that time. Also, it made the story of The Sound of Music even more difficult. The movie was an international hit, won 5 Oscars, and made almost $300 million at the box office, which was a lot of money for the time. Plummer fought it all the way. Christopher Plummer's name will always be linked to The Sound of Music, even if he didn't like it. When people think of The Sound of Music, they picture Maria going to live with the Von Trapp family in 1938 and falling in love with their 7 naughty kids and their strict dad. The story was very different in real life, though. She first came to live at the Von Trapp home in 1926, not 1938. She also didn't become a governess to 7 kids. One child, a girl named Maria Francisca, who was getting better from scarlet fever, was all she was meant to teach. The family had been through a lot of heartache before Maria came along. His first wife, Agatha Whitehead, had died in 1922, just 4 years before their daughter did, from a disease that was similar to the one that had killed their daughter. Georg was 47 years old when Maria married him on November 26, 1927. At Nonnberg Abbey. Maria was only 22 years old. They were 25 years apart in age. By the time the Nazis took over Austria in 1938, Maria and Georg had been married for 11 years, had 2 girls, and were expecting a 3rd child. The movie doesn't show this at all. And that cute kid with wide eyes in the movie. In fact, the oldest Von Trapp child was a grown man named Rupert who was already a doctor. Even the love story that made a lot of people happy wasn't really what happened. Maria herself said that when she married Georg, she wasn't in love with him. She said it herself. "I was not in love at all. I liked him, but I didn't love him. I loved the kids, though." She didn't want to be married to a captain. She had a dream of becoming a nun. Maria wasn't sure what to do when Georg asked her to marry him. So she ran back to Nonnberg Abbey to get help. Mother Abbess told her that God wanted her to marry him. In the end, Maria said that on her wedding day, she was mad at both God and Georg because her heart was set on another person. It wasn't romance that made her decide. Instead of asking her to marry him, Georg asked her to be a second mother to his kids. She thought she might have said no if he had asked her in a different way. The love triangle wasn't very interesting either. In the movie, the Baroness was based on a real person named Princess Yvonne. She had no desire to have many children. When she got married to Georg, she was going to send the Von Trapp kids to private schools. When the princess found out that Georg liked Maria, she left, but she didn't do it quietly. She is said to have spread a bad story that Georg had gotten Maria pregnant before they got married. Hollywood was smart to leave out this scandalous claim from the musical. No one ever made the exciting escape over the mountains into Switzerland that everyone knows from the movie. Maria joked that they would have walked right into Nazi Germany if they had tried to climb the mountains outside of Salzburg. The Von Trapps really just walked with their backpacks to the nearby train station, got on a train, and quietly left Austria, saying they were going on a family trip. You won't find a midnight chase, climb hills, or hear dramatic music. Also, they were lucky. They left the day before the Nazis closed off the borders with Austria. In the end, Heinrich Himmler, one of the most important Nazi leaders, moved into their house and used it as a summer home. The family went from Italy to London and then took a ship to America. They got there in September 1939 with almost nothing. They had lost most of their money when banks failed in 1935. Later, they built a life in Vermont, where they opened a lodge that the family still runs today. In America, they went on tour as the Trapp family musicians, but the movie left out even more facts that were hard to watch. The Sound of Music showed Austria under Nazi rule in a very soft, almost fairy tale way. It mostly shows the Nazis as stupid bad guys, like bad guys in cartoons. The real horrors of the Nazi regime, the fear, the torture, and the pain, are almost entirely missing. The Annales, which is where Nazi Germany took over Austria, is mostly shown as a way for the Von Trapps to lose their rights. Jews and other victims' fates are never talked about. Even when the nuns took the spark plugs out of the Nazis' cars, it never seems like they were desperate. Instead, it seems like a clever joke. During the Cold War, this cleaned-up version of the movie made it easier for people in the U.S. to watch. No hard questions were asked about Austria's real part in the war. The story was just a fight between good and evil. In fact, Austria wasn't just a Nazi victim state. A lot of Austrians were happy to have Hitler as a leader, and some people were very involved in the crimes committed by the Nazis. In Salzburg, where they went to shoot, that's what they ran into. Officials in the area said no when they tried to hang swastika flags around the old city to film the Nazi scenes. They didn't want those hateful signs to show up in their streets ever again. Director Robert Wise said he would use real video of Hitler visiting Salzburg, which would show crowds cheering and Nazi salutes. Because of that threat, the officials gave in and let the flags fly, but only under very strict rules. They shot early in the morning so that most people wouldn't see. Still, some people in the area got up early and saw the swastikas. They looked very scared. That time's wounds still hadn't healed. Besides that, the music also had a political side that most people don't notice. It was a sign of Austria's strange political identity in the 1930s that Captain Von Trapp was real. It wasn't a democracy in Austria back then. That country had an authoritarian government that hated the Nazis and was very hard on its own people. The white cross necklace that Georg von Trapp wore wasn't just a Christian symbol. It stood for the nationalist idea that Austria was better than Germany because it was Catholic. This movie makes Austria look like it's full of good, traditional, conservative heroes, but the truth was rougher. A lot of people in Austria agreed with Hitler's ideas. Some people fought back, but not because they valued democracy and freedom. Instead, they did so because they believed in their own brand of totalitarian rule. No one knew how popular The Sound of Music would become when it first came out in theaters on March 2, 1965. That was just $8.2 million spent on it, and it not only worked, it blew everyone away. I couldn't believe what it did by November 1967. It spent more than Gone with the Wind and became the highest-grossing movie of all time. It kept that title for 5 years. The numbers were shocking all over the world. It made more than $286 million, It was the first movie ever to make more than $100 million, which had never been done before. The numbers are even stranger when you take inflation into account. The money it made now is about $236 billion. It's still happily at number 3 on U.S. charts that take inflation into account, just behind Gone with the Wind and the first Star Wars movie. It was so busy in some towns that theaters sold more tickets than people lived there. It wasn't just a hit, it became a huge deal. But not everyone had success right away. Some reviews didn't like the movie when it first came out at New York's Rivoli Theater. Writers from the East Coast tore it apart the most. At the time, Bosley Crowther of the New York Times said it was unnecessary and beautiful. The New York Herald Tribune's Judith Christ thought it was made just for little kids and their moms. Pauline Kael said it was an even bigger lie and that people had lost their sense of what is beautiful and moving. People liked it outside of the big cities, even though it was harsh. Local papers and magazines for the movie business gave it good reviews. Philip K. According to Schuer of the Los Angeles Times, it was 3 hours of brilliant singing and dancing. Variety said that it was warmly pulsing and engaging. In a later joke, director Robert Wise said that the real people and trade writers got what the movie was about, but the fancy reviewers didn't. Composer Richard Rodgers also spoke out in support of the movie. He said that showing too much heart and flowers might make people feel bad, but there's nothing wrong with being honest about how you feel. History has been on the fans' side over time. There are 83% positive reviews of The Sound of Music on Rotten Tomatoes right now, and that number keeps going up. At the 38th Academy Awards in 1966, there were a lot of awards. There were 5 Oscars for The Sound of Music. Best Picture and Best Director went to Robert Wise. It also won Best Sound, Best Picture Editing, and Best Music Scoring. There were 10 Oscar nominations for the movie. Julie Andrews was up for Best Actor, and Peggy Wood was up for Best Supporting Actress. As well, the Golden Globes gave it the award for Best Motion Picture, Comedy, or Musical, and Julie Andrews won the award for Best Performer. More awards were given by the Writers Guild and the Directors Guild to honor the film's great writing and direction. It also left behind other things. The U.S. Library of Congress added The Sound of Music to the National Film Registry in 2001, saying that it was important for culture, history, or art. Then, in 2017, the album was added to the National Recording Registry because it was such a great piece of music. It is now ranked by the American Film Institute as the 55th best American movie ever made and the 4th best film musical ever made.